and welcome back to the War Room, which is our interview series as part of the Clone Star Pod. I am your host, Sean Ferrick. Joining me in the host seat this week is the oft-praised yet little seen Mike Overton. Mike, thank you so much for joining me this week. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Sean.
We are so delighted to welcome the person who quite literally gave us the Enterprise D bridge again, which is just not a sentence I thought I was going to say, and yet here we are. Liz Kloczkowski, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
How often, since the episodes dropped, have you been getting tweets and messages from people just being like, "Oh, you gave me my childhood back. Thanks so much."
Yeah, a lot. I'll say a lot. It was kind of overwhelming to just get so many thank yous and like, "You're amazing, thank you, God bless you, and thank you for bringing back my childhood," over and over and over again. But it's been it's really so pleasant, and you never get that really on a show. Normally people like it, but there's not like people chasing you down to congratulate you. So that's definitely been a pleasure.
That's fantastic. And I suppose as well, and probably a question you've got a lot is, how long have you had to sit on this for?
Oh yeah, maybe a year and a half. It was we started in 2021 into 2022, and I've done almost three shows since that. So I'm going back to 3 shows ago of work. I've had adventures, I've been everywhere, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember we did that, and we never said anything about it. And so now, it's everyone else's first time experiencing it, so I get to relive it, which is also like, I've just been really spoiled. Like people applauding or like, "Oh, this is amazing." Like there's only so many times people can say that, but I'm just like, thank you.
It's incredible because, like, looking at your resume, Star Trek Picard, which of course we are also, we are our socks are blown off by this. It's amazing. This is an important yet just one part of a very impressive resume. For example, I mean, your work on Quantum Leap is incredible. Full disclosure, I found out this evening that you worked on Promising Young Woman, which I thought was an amazing film. Barrel of Laughs, great film. How does that feel for you, going from genre to genre to genre? Like, do you get to just completely stretch your artistic legs, so to speak, and just like run with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, that's what we do for a living, so it's whatever genre you're doing, you're researching. So I'd approach Star Trek kind of the same way I've done 2 historical shows. And so I'm in the 1800s and I'm researching every single thing there is about that world. And so the world building, that's just kind of what art directors do. But it's definitely been like, your brain becomes elastic because you're obsessed with whatever you're studying at the time. But Star Trek definitely was the biggest thing I've ever worked on. So it was a treat for me. I had just watched all of TNG before they hired me. So I'm like, after you watch all these episodes and then you go to work and Sir Patrick Stewart is right there and you're like, "Oh, how did this happen?" So it's definitely and even like just the sci-fi and the giant spaceships and the millions of dollars, like that was all new to me. Like Promising Young Woman, we had like $40,000 to put art in the movie, and so it was that was definitely a jump. And I spent a lot of time getting Dave to hire me. But not even that, but just to get in the door, because you're new, and if you look at my resume, it's not, everything's in the last couple of years, really. So it was not just Dave, but it was, many people. I had to kind of convince them, hey, I'm the person for this job. And like, I'll care for it more than maybe somebody more qualified. But that was really the challenge. And then once I got in the door, I ended up being the like Trek source, a little knowledge source. And so then for me, it's great when your enthusiasm is appreciated, and that applies on every job, but for sure on Star Trek, it can manifest. You can get big, really fast.
Like it's fantastic. I can imagine it's just like this freight train that just keeps going. Because you came in on season 2, is that correct? And then because I know with season 2 and 3 they were filmed back to back. So was there an overlap of, one day you might be working on, say for example, the Enterprise D bridge, and then the next day you'll be working on something from season 2? Was there a lot of that?
No, it went back to back, but we do it in blocks. So every 2 scripts we'll prep it at a time. So if I'm doing I came in episode 3-ish of season 2, 3 and 4. So you'll do 3 and 4 together, 5 and 6 together, 7 and 8 together, like that. So they were already shooting 3 and 4-ish, and so I was prepping 5 and 6, and then I did 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and then was it 9 and 10? So the last block. At that point, I was doing the NASA gala for season 2. I was eating lunch one day, and Bruce, the art director I was working for, I was actually the assistant art director at first, and then they upgraded me in block not. It's the last 4 episodes ish. But we were eating lunch one day, and the art director was like, "Oh, hey, Dave Blass, Liz watches Star Trek." And he was like, "What?" And so that was, for me, it was good, because then it was, you could pass kind of a questions test on how much do you know. And then after that, he started assigning me stuff. And so they ended up pulling me off of season 2 stuff at the end of season 2 to start prepping Eleos and the sickbay for season 3. So there were art directors still working on season 2 stuff, but I was already in the first block of season 3. And that's kind of how that worked. So we're all overlapping, and we all have our hands on all the episodes, but sometimes you have a lot more work in a certain block than others. Like even in season 3, Kit had some heavy blocks, and then I had some heavy blocks, and at the end we both had big sets. So it's just, you have to just look at how much work can somebody do in a day, and even that's you end up working more. So it was definitely very busy.
I can well imagine. Actually, Mike sitting there, it's everything he's wearing and around him is just something he's built himself for earlier on today.
Right.
It's kind of I would imagine that you haven't had to get up at 3 a.m. You're probably still up working away on something.
No, I clocked off at 9 p.m, got a few hours sleep, and then I've got up a bit early.
Sorry, Mike. Wake him up.
No, it's fine. So you said you were one of the first onto season 3. What was one of the biggest challenges that you faced with the Eleos set? Because obviously that's kind of a bit of a hybrid, isn't it, between sort of the TNG, it's an older set, it's an older ship. What were some of the challenges that you faced with that? Did you have to do a lot of sort of digging back through the archives to look at what was being done at the end of Voyager, the end of DS9, or was it just kind of, no, we know roughly what we want and sort of jump ahead and get on with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of both. So I knew it was going to be an old ship, so I didn't have to really study Voyager or even the Serena or anything new like this, because they wanted it to be a 50-year-old ship. So we ended up going back to the episode of Voyager called The Raven, where it's the one where Seven's parents, you got to get Seven's origin story, but they're on an old ship. They're on a science vessel. We wanted a science vessel. We wanted a medical-ish thing from that, maybe even older than that. And it's something that they, Beverly and Jack acquired and fixed up, and it's got some new tech to it, but it's overall pretty old. So we borrowed the view screen of that. I think the biggest challenge was that the room that I had to play with, we get stage space, and sometimes there's a set already on that stage, and you're encouraged to use that because it's there. So it's not extra money to build fresh flats, So we had a room to start with, and that room was a square. And I was doing all this research, and I'm like, oh man, bridges are circular, and everybody kind of knows that. And I guess the general consensus was, it's fine. And I was and Dave and I were both kind of a little stressed by that. So we curvatured the room a little bit. There's not really square corners to it, but it's not as circular as most bridges with a view screen and that kind of thing. So the Eleos, we kind of had to design it in a way where if you look at the ship, there is a square little top viewing window area to it. We've backed ourselves into that, but you want it to look like old Trek, and you want to bring in nostalgia, and you want we've had fun with the L cars, playing kind of with that purple and orange Okuda, how he wanted it to be. And that's, the Raven has those pretty purple L cars too. So it kind of gives it a vintage vibe. So we started throwing in stuff to give it that oh, okay, this is an old ship. But we also wanted it to feel kind of like Alien, and like the movie Alien, and there's blinky red lights, and there's old stuff, and we actually did like some, I think it's Insurrection did them. Todd Marks will correct me. They had some actual push buttons back, there's L cars, and then there were push buttons for certain things. And that's, even as far back as original series. So you're like, oh, we know the ship is old, and we know there's some weird tech to it. So, I mean, it ended up being fun, but it was also, we had some puzzles to solve along the way, and that's what we do.
And how long did you typically get to sort of put a set like that together?
So I had the most time for Eleos and Sickbay because they were still shooting season 2. So normally we shoot like through 15 days at a time. So it's not, you don't have a lot of time. You've got like a couple of weeks in between episodes, but I had a little bit of time bought for me because we were shooting season 2. They started me a little earlier. So it's just a couple of weeks,
right?
And you get like a week or two in design phase where you're zooming with graphic designers and set designers and all of those people. They need time to actually work. Like they have a work week. Like, oh, I worked on this for a week. It's like they barely had that amount of time. We had concept art we had to turn around. We had working drawings from the concept art that we had to turn around. All of that has to happen before construction starts building it, and construction needed a couple of weeks, at minimum for these huge Titan-esque sets. Same thing with the sick bay. It was a brand new build. That was like an empty stage when we came into it. And it had to look like it was on the Titan. And I'm like, the Titan's this huge, massive, like all new tech, and so you have to take all the architecture from that and come up with something a room that would fit on this ship, so those were going simultaneously, and it was definitely a lot of sleepless nights. But once you start seeing stuff come together, you can relax a little bit.
It's I think one of the things that Trek itself has such a good reputation for, that has carried obviously over into Picard, is the sets always look that you can see the love and care that go into them, and it grounds it an awful. I mean, we have this thing that's set in a nebula out in space. You've got an awful lot of CGI going on, and yet you have these solid, real spaces where you see, characters moving from day to day as well. An awful lot of use was got out of the 10 forward set, which we enjoyed a lot. I was like, because we were watching a few episodes in, they were just being like, this is getting your money's worth out of this set. This is a good set, what it is right there.
Well, I think their intention though was to show like people lived here, and you want to. Part of the like conceit is that you believe that these fans that these characters are like, you're the fan and the characters are living this life. So they go and they eat, and they have dinners in their apartments, and they're running down hallways looking for some tech room to get something done. So when you give that, like, I want to say realism, even though it's sci-fi, that believability, like that. So the 10 forward was a great place for that, because it gave, they could write all sorts of stories in it, but you go to eat every single day. So you believe that, oh, okay, yeah, they'd be here. So that's their hangout spot. I think this year it was the sick bay was kind of the hangout spot, but Beverly was back. So yeah, she's probably down there. But that's like the fun thing of why Star Trek is fun, is we're escaping for a little bit.
Absolutely. And identity, and it's just, I think it's been said time and time again, particularly since season 3 came out, is how much it does feel like it's recaptured an awful lot of, particularly obviously the next generation feeling that we as next gen fans have been kind of waiting for since Nemesis. And it's been, not that it wasn't there in seasons 1 and 2, I don't mean to imply that, but there is a lovely familial sense with the returning cast as well as everything else. Of course, culminating in, kind of the world could hear the squeak as everyone kind of had that same reaction as, both the hangar bay doors open and then the bridge doors open. That was incredible. That was just incredible. How difficult was it to, I mean, like in terms of getting it to look exactly as it did, in all good things? What was the challenge there? And I presume what was the fear levels of, oh my God, we've got to get this right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it started in season 2 where, like, when you see fans, when fans don't like something, right? There's a lot of talk on the feedback is, I think, pretty loud, and so if you get it wrong,
we've never
someone's
noticed
going to notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that fear, like they'll know, and so there's a little bit of that, but it's like you want it to be that, like, you don't want people to be like just comparing what was wrong about it, and like, we're not on the Vegas set, we don't, like, it would be about that, and it wouldn't be about the story, and really the story was coming back to that moment, and you want to have those feelings, and you're not going to have those feelings if there's too many distractions. And so I guess that was the first fear. And then the second fear is when you're, especially in television, you're using what you have, and it's not feature level budgets. Even this show, it was pretty big, but it's no, there's not enough for that because we've got another episode. And when you get to the last episodes, there's only so much money left. That applies to any budget show. And so the fear is that, oh, we're not going to have enough money to do it right. Oh, then we'll just put old fake chairs in, or we'll cut corners here, and the doors will be wrong, or like there's all this stuff that, like, once you start making, it's like when you substitute a recipe and then you substituted too many things and now the food tastes horrible. So there's another fear that people are going to say, oh, that's fine, and it's probably not going to be fine. But I got really lucky that my obsessive personality was encouraged, and so I'm like, oh, like stressing about things that normally people would be like, what, you're nuts, but now they're like, oh, no, we understand, like, we'll get it right. And so that was really cool, that people were supportive, and everybody, I think, knew that they were creating history or recreating history a little bit. And so there wasn't really a lot of pushback with, oh, can't I just do it the easy way? Like, everybody was like, can you explain it to me? I just want to make sure I get it right. And so that you can tell, like, the care and love that was put into it. But, even people that didn't, there were a lot of people in our crew that didn't watch TNG, and so they have to be guided to do it right. But it's like a museum recreation. You really want to just make sure that, there's reference material and you're matching the source material, and people didn't cut corners. And I think you could see that.
Right. And there's several shots. There's one particular, I think it's where Data's piloting, and there's a camera pan right up, and you just see that decal on the edge of his console. It just has the 047. And it's like things like that. It's the detail that goes into that. And then what ye have as well, ye has the added, I suppose, challenge of all of this is being shot and broadcast in 4K. So it's like,
right.
If there's a scuff, I've already seen people, in fact, comparing the accuracy of the horseshoe in terms of down to the actual paneling of the wood.
Oh, yeah. No, we tried really hard with that. And there were things like, if you bring up 4K, there were screw holes in all of the panels in TNG, and you didn't see them because it was SD and it was film, and there was all this stuff that you lose, and you don't lose that in 4K. So, somebody drew, Kevin, I think, drew the screws in because he was copying the reference images. And when we got to it, some guy was holding a screw gun, and I was like, oh, no, we don't want screws. But that was a choice because we knew that people would see it. And then it's funny, I've seen on the internet, people are like, oh, there weren't screws, like they changed it, and so it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword a little bit, but that was a style choice because they would have been like shiny and huge in 4K. And so there are things that, again, we don't want to create distractions. And so, like, the stickers too were a big discussion because Mike he has joke stickers, and most of the stickers were jokes because you didn't see what was on the sticker. Now people can read what's on the sticker. So we're like, oh, do we do jokes or do we do, the real thing? And so he sent me the graphics for both, and I printed both, and I think one of the replicators has a joke on it by accident, but mostly all the stickers are real because we were afraid that you would see them. So, we had to take all of that into account.
I can just imagine, like, there's fury as this goes that people are going to go straight to analyze every frame of the replicator. All right, where's the joke?
Oh yeah, they've seen it. I didn't even notice it. Somebody said it. Somebody pointed it out to me. I'm like, oh, did we put jokes on that?
I know, actually. Well, Mike, you would know more about this than me about rebuilding the actual, obviously, the L cars and the screens on the bridge.
From what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike did most of the work on the Enterprise D, and then some of it was handed off to Twisted to then sort of animate and so on. And am I right in thinking that it's only the back wall that used displays? Everything else was printed.
So the con and ops, what Data and Geordi are playing with, those had screens in them too.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But then everybody else, like the captain's chairs, the horseshoe, all of that was just backlit. The replicators, anything that kind of doesn't really animate that much. Even the walls, like the padded walls with little blinky lights, those actually have LCARs on them. Those are just backlit.
Right.
There's no we could fit an iPhone everywhere, but and then someone has to operate. So there was 7 screens in the aft. It's like 5 in the middle and then 2 little side screens that you only see them when in the kind of raking shots. But those were screens.
Were there any challenges to trying to get all of that to look especially with screens, to look as close to the original TNG as possible? Because obviously going back to the original TNG, it was a Translite panel with a CRT monitor in it.
Yeah. No, I was shitting myself most of the whole process trying to get it. So it was right. And it's funny too, because I was like, no, we're going to do everything authentic. And Todd Playback was like, no, we can fit screens back there. And Mike and Ben Betts, actually, who's another playback guy, they all worked on. I mean, I had so many people that were on the original shows, so it was super helpful with how did you do it on Nemesis? How did you do it on Insurrection? So I had that knowledge with them, but they're explaining to me these things and the blinky lights and all this stuff that I guess when you looked at the back of the app, it was just a wired crazy mess of geniusness, So all of this, that's how they had everything working, and they had the little CRTs. And Todd looked at me and he's like, I think I can find screens that'll fit. And I ended up agreeing. And I was worried we wouldn't find things that would fit the aspect ratio, but we found the 50-inch TVs fit, and it didn't change. What I didn't want to do is change Mike's original LCARs. And so it'll force it sometimes based on how much the screen can cover. And we just got lucky that the top of the screen is at the bottom of the top line of the aft. And so it fit. And then the benefit of that is now all of that blinky, the spinny, the CRTs, all of that can be built. Twisted can build that into the graphic. And so Mike gave us base graphics for everything. And then everything screen related, Twisted added, the glam too. And the Twisted and those guys did the power up sequence, which was beautiful, and all of that was in camera, which people don't realize. Yep. But then all the LCARs, Mike had those base graphics, but they all had to be resized to whatever my plexiglass was. And so I'm down there measuring, to the millimeter what this plexi is, to get it right. But even that, fitting it. So when you put TV behind plexiglass, the TV is always going to look brighter than what the graphic is around it, and so you kind of see these squares popping out. You can see it with the CRTs too. You see a square where the TV would, even when it's off, the black is different. And we ended up troubleshooting. I spent a lot of more money than I want to admit on trial plexi testers. And we ended up putting a very, very light smoke plexi with a black mat all around it. And that would go over everything. And it actually just sharpens the blacks of the monitors and ties everything in. And so when you look at it, when you're staring at a black border with a bar that's printed, and then you've got TVs behind it, but you don't notice it because the smoke kind of ties it all in. And even with the LCARs, if you turn regular plexiglass, if you turn the lights off and it's printed backlit, it's going to look bright. It's going to look like it's still on. It's just not going to be glowing. And so with the smoke, when you turn it off, it looks black, like a TV is turned off. And so when you play with different levels of smoked plexi, some of them are because I can't put smoke plexi in front of a TV, or the TV is not going to look as bright as you want it to. So it's just a slight, very, very light smoke on top of it. But that kind of ties it all together. So that was another trick we printed some stuff on clear plexi, and when you turn it off, it still looked bright. And I was like, oh, this isn't what they did, but they used smoke plexi back on TNG. So I'm going to the same vendors to find the same material, and you do tests and that ended up working out. But it's definitely people are asking you oh, what's the plan, Liz? And I'm like, we figure it out as we go.
What's the plan? It's a secret, and I'll tell you afterwards.
But I knew they give you time to research it and get back.
It's a need to know, and you don't need to know. There you go.
Exactly.
Once everything is in place, then I suppose the difference between Next Generation and Picard is lighting. It just shows are lit differently now. So, and then when you go back on board the bridge, things automatically go back to the 90s lighting style. Is there then a nightmare of trying to keep the light reflections out of these same screens? I know they had their troubles back in TNG. There's black cardboard everywhere on screens. Did you then find yourself being like, great, okay, we've got everything. I mean, with the display, that's incredible. Can please no one light this set? Can just no one light it, and then my life becomes easier?
No, actually, I figured this out back on sick bay. So the Voyager style, like sanitizing bay there, that's all straight plexiglass. And that's straight plexiglass, like facing camera. So in theory, the lights and the camera crew and everything would be visible on that plexi, just like how in TNG. That's why the after is such a struggle, is because the screens are all like upright. And so we did some testers and we figured out a way running an ink pass over the top of the plexi. So it's clear plexi with the backlit film attached to the back of it. And then we'd have the print shop run like a mask almost on the top of it. And the ink that they run, it's just paint, like almost like the smoke plexi, but it mattifies it. And so it like absorbs all the reflections. And so we ran tests on that, and all the sick bay, it's almost like a, what's the word? It's almost like a film that you put on like a mattified film that you put on the top of the graphic. But we tested that, and that worked. Like you don't see any reflections in sick bay, like at all, and so we tried the same thing on Enterprise D, and all that stuff works. So you can see like kind of soft glowing of the lights, but you don't see crew reflection. They really didn't have any reflections to deal with. So that was a super win. The only thing with it is if you clean it with alcohol or even Windex, you'll clean off my ink. And so a few times there are like little scrub marks, and I'm like ripping the pieces off and sending them back to the sign shop to redo. So construction, I think every piece of plexi that they cut 3 cuts. So like the horseshoe had 3 backups, and I didn't print. I think I had a whole backup, a whole set of at least one of the horseshoe because I was afraid of sitting on it or people breaking it. Stuff happens. And then on the day we didn't have a lot of time to shoot it, so I'd have to bring that in pretty fast. So I did have like a backup, but if we break the backup, then I'm doing a backup to the backup. And it was just like tons of plexi being sent to the sign shops to be printed. So that was, but it worked really well, and we didn't break anything. I think we only replaced the horseshoe plexis once, and that's because somebody cleaned it or something happened.
I thought you were going to say Jonathan Frakes sat on it.
No, that was the Eleos, but that was a different set.
Because it's funny, because if there's hardly an episode of TNG goes by and he's not sitting, it's become a running joke that Riker sits on every surface possible. Did you mention that happened on the Eleos, did it?
Yeah, and it's funny. I was mad. The glass broke, and I was like, "Who did this?" And no one would say anything, And I was like storming my way into the set to like make an announcement, and somebody was like, "No, it was Jonathan." And then I was like, "Oh, okay," And so that. So we replaced that glass twice. So that was real glass, and I found that out the hard way too. Eleos was my first set, trying to figure out the tricks of like LCARs and tap screens, and someone told me, "Oh, you can't use like plexi because it doesn't work." And I was like, "What do you mean it doesn't work?" And I ordered the graphics, and when they type on it, it goes boom, 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 boom. And so I was like, "Oh no!" And so as long as like soon enough. So that had to be tempered glass. And so we get that printed, we bring all the stuff. And I didn't do the cool film trick. I hadn't figured that out yet on Eleos. So if you look at the Eleos screens, they're much more reflective. But the ceiling was cool, so we were kind of okay with it. Because it was just reflecting the ceiling. It wasn't like vertical reflecting the crew. But yeah, so when the glass breaks, it's broken glass, and you've got to replace that immediately. So I learned that lesson too, that now so you have backups of everything.
just imagine, like, there's the box that's just like, in case of Frakes, open box.
Well, and I didn't really I watched the show, but I wasn't like under fear of Frakes sitting on it. You don't think about that until afterwards. So that was fun though. He's honestly my favorite. He's such a lovely man. I'll replace the glass for him anytime.
It's funny actually that you mentioned, because there's a few people who were able to be on set for filming, and then actors and crew have come out and said that it was so much fun being on set, but they had the fear of God of touching anything or scuffing anything or marking anything. And I completely understand it. Because not only, of course, we'd have to change everything out, but just like, hold on, we realized later on, there's now a scratch on that wasn't there earlier on. Who did that? The pressure must have been intense.
Well, it's like, it's not, I don't know if it wasn't the actors as much as even the crew. It was like, be very careful with the set because it's so important, and we're going to save it afterwards. We're not throwing it out. So this isn't something you can just like throw your equipment through, and not that they do it anyways, but it definitely was, it even like for the pyro, like there was talks of doing like some explosions or some sparks and stuff. And I was like, the carpet, like, like we can't.
I've seen the
sparks.
pictures that says somebody please think of the carpet with that sign up in the middle of it.
Yeah. So there was a whole like me having a meltdown because we were talking about sparks, and Ian was like, we're not doing sparks, the first AD. So yeah, there was some of that. So yeah, I mean, I think the respect thing was really there just because it's just such an important, it's a character, it's like your grandma, like you're very, very careful, leading her around out of love. So
I try not to shower my grandma in too many sparks. You're right. But you've actually touched on a very important thing. Yes, so the set has been kept for posterity. Where is it, and can I have a go?
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing.
No, and it was a fight too. Not a fight, but like, where is it going? And everyone's kind of talking about, oh, it could go here, it could go here. But the panic is there'll be a time where this rental on the stage will be like we don't, the lease is up and the stuff has to go, and the same thing with the labor. It takes grips and construction, prop makers and all these guys to disassemble it. So that we've got to do it in the time period that is like in the budget. I had already moved on to another show. It sat maybe another week or two before they gave the strike order. And then somebody sent me like a picture of the empty stage. I was just so sad, that it was packed up. But yeah, no, there were debates on where it was going. And I'm pretty sure Star Trek Archives put it in a warehouse. But then it's like, do you have enough space for this? It's very big. We're going to show up with it. And is there enough room for it? And so John Van Sitters, who runs Star Trek Archives, he had pulled that together. And, you've got to convince somebody with money to open a lease on a warehouse or move stuff around to make room, and so that he settled all of that. So it's in the archives, where I think is a safe place. So when someone wants to set it back up, I hope they call me and I'll set it back up.
I just have visions of a Warehouse 13 style room that's just, goes on for kilometers and it's just full of everything Star Trek.
Yeah, no, it's a much smaller room. He has like, there's rooms everywhere and little warehouse spaces. And there's, we'd go there to look for stuff, maybe vintage things we wanted to use. Like he lent me some tricorders and some stuff for the sick bay and for Beverly's, her ship, So, it was cool to see all of that stuff, but it definitely, they didn't have enough space when we were nervous, when we were talking about it. But, yeah, I think I'd definitely be a lot sadder if I had to tell people it was gone, but it's not gone. It's safely tucked away.
I think, yeah, once people who started to see that it was being kept and it was like this collective sigh was kind of relief, because I mean, it seems part and parcel, a show finishes up, you strike the sets. It's just part of us. Anyway, I've lost down a sad rabbit hole here. But anyway, what happiness is that it still exists for the inevitable Star Trek Legacy, which I presume you're about to confirm for us right now.
I would love to. I wish I knew anything about that, but and I hope they call me for that too. But I signed the petition. But yeah, no, it was a sigh of relief. It definitely, we don't get that on. I mean, honestly, everything I've ever worked on has been thrown out, unless maybe not everything. And Universal is good about they save stuff. Like if you work on a certain lot and their assets, they'll asset that stuff, and so then you'll see it, later on a different show. You'll see it, but it doesn't happen all the time. And especially if a show gets canceled, or if it's a finale or whatever, there's a chance, maybe it's a first season show. I worked on one of those this year that didn't make it, and all that stuff, I'm pretty sure got thrown out. So it was, you put a lot of love and care into anything. And, sometimes it's saved if it's acidable, but if it's not, must move on. But that's also kind of part of the job.
I was going to say, is that something you
Painful.
have to bear in mind, that that a lot of this stuff isn't going to be saved? You can't get too sort of personal with it, because it's going to be thrown in the trash afterwards.
Yeah, that's what it's making movies, so you want to make it look as realistic as possible, and afterwards, whatever happens. But a lot of times, like nothing we're making is going to stay forever. We're not doing the Sistine Chapel. It's all scenery.
Oh, I don't know. I think the Enterprise D could be up there.
Yeah. It's like in terms, I'd say Trekkies, myself included, definitely consider the Enterprise D bridge as at least on par with the Sistine Chapel, and that sounds 100%. Like an exaggeration, but actually I think there'd be probably a sizable amount of Trekkies who'd be like, yeah.
One of those.
I remember now. I'm 90% sure I have this right. I think it was after Star Trek 5 wrapped. The bridge was kept, but it wasn't kept safely. So when production started on 6, it might be 4 or 5, but I think it's 5, 6. That they were like, great, okay, brilliant. Let's get the bridge, which we saved, and it's brilliant. And it had just completely started to rot. And it was just, I think everyone was just like, oh my God. So,
if something's going to come back, and I worked on a couple of years ago the show How to Get Away with Murder, and we would do an episode, and then 3 episodes later, a set that we took down would come back because they're telling flashbacks and they don't know where the ending, where it's going to go. So we folded this whole set to make room on a stage, and they're like, okay, bring it back. And so you never know when you'll need it again. If there's another season, like if you're season 1 or 2 and there'll be a 3, you save everything because you never know how it's. And same with me too, because I do a lot of research and management, and like my binders, like just having a wrap book explaining, here are the paint colors, here's what we did, here's our process. Like the Enterprise, I remember a lot of it, but I wrote everything down, so that when we come back, oh, what did we order? It's such a hassle. Or if you take over something, sometimes the pilot will be one crew, and then a new crew will come in for the rest of the season. And if the pilot they don't have, they didn't tell us what they did, we have to recreate a lot of that stuff. And so it ends up being a lot of forensics. So it's not a foreign concept, but I try to keep it together for the next guy, because you really never know what's going to come up, or even if you're going to refurb something and turn it into something else, and you need to match paint colors. Even just that alone it's good to have it all written down. But the plexi and the process we did with all of that,
So how much from the original TNG sort of construction was there in way of reference material? Did you have original blueprints, original paint colors and all of that? Or was it a case that you literally had to go through episode frames and just general knowledge to try and figure out what was left and what was supposed to be what?
There was stuff, but it wasn't, nothing was in a binder neatly organized for me in the order I needed it. It was, Doug Drexler had some prints in his garage that he sent me photos of. The Okudas had stuff. The big thing with me is the Okudas were really good about cataloging, and so they had set photos from season 6 that we wouldn't have been successful without those, because he takes pictures of things that you don't just get from a screen grab. He takes pictures. His brain is the art department, so he has pictures of all the L-cars and the horseshoe and every angle and the little alcoves and stuff that you don't think to go take a photo of. Mike had all of that. So that was super useful. So from that, some screen grabs, prints from Drexler. There's a bunch of prints on the internet. And then kind of the same, I kept finding the same prints. Like even at Archives, they had they had the horseshoe and they had the ceiling. There were some pages that, Drex had the same copies of the same stuff. And so I'm like, I already have that. So I was missing a lot of stuff, but I had like maybe 40% of what the original build was. But I had stuff that they drew from the pilot, and they changed stuff even from the pilot to season 2. So now we're extrapolating, what got changed, and then the set designer has to just do that from photos. So we had to evolve all the stuff. We had drawings for things, but it all had to be evolved. And the paint colors, a contact of mine, James Cawley, who runs the Ticonderoga experience.
Oh yeah.
He has a piece of the set original set. I don't know where he got it from, like one of those collectible, eBay or from the trash of Paramount. But he has a piece that he color matched for me to get the beige. And so there's stuff that, I was like, are you sure this is right? Because I don't know. And he's like, it's right. It's right. Like he's 100% sure that it's right. And if I trust anyone with authenticity, I trust that guy. So.
Oh, that would be, I can only, because as you've mentioned, it's like, we will be there with our notepads and, we will be well-meaning. We will, kind of, oh yeah. And I really hope I'm right in saying this. It is the dedication plaque that survived from the next generation. So when Jean-Luc walks past that, that's all of the tears that well up. That's the one that was on the bridge. Like, was that kind of? I can only imagine that was the crown jewels have less security than that probably has.
Well, it's times are different. So in the old days, the TNG days, the captain's chair was stolen. And this time around, I was like, if somebody steals this plaque, like this is a priceless piece. I mean, it's from Mike Okuda, like Herman Zimmerman gave it to him. So Mike, and the frame was missing, so we reframed it. He had the plaque, and I compared it to the Franklin Mint one that I was going to use, and it's different. They're close, but I was like, oh, we've got to use the real thing. And Mike, would you let us use it? He's like, oh, of course. But now I'm responsible for this priceless Mona Lisa. And so I took it down every night after they were done filming. I took it and locked it in my office. But one night I was working late and I had left it there, and I went down to go get it at like 9:00 or something, and it was gone. And I was like, Dave probably took it. So I went to his office and was like, where is it? And it was on his table. So, he tried to give me a little bit of a scare, but it should have just been taken down right when they wrapped. So at one time, it was unaccounted for a few minutes.
That heart in your stomach feels sick. What the hell has happened to this plaque?
But the times are different. So there's not as many people on this set that. First of all, security is a lot different. There was COVID. You couldn't get on the lot. It wasn't like tons of people working at Santa Clarita Studios. Like our stages only had Star Trek people. And not everybody who works on the show is a Star Trek fan. So there's some people who are like, what? Like they don't care. They're just going to work. And then there are other people that understand how important it is. And so I just didn't want to take that chance. So there was, taken down.
Just imagine all these selfies on the net of people just holding this plaque.
Yeah, no. Even getting it back to Mike too. I'm like, are we mailing it back to him, or are we going to hand deliver it to him, just to get it back to him? So yeah, I think it's the same thing. It's like bubble wrapping it and making it look very nondescript.
That's it as well. Like, you kind of like, once it's too obvious, you're like, oh, someone's going to twig it. There's going to be someone out there who's going to twig it and be like, oh, I might just see what's in this box. And then someone sends him the Franklin Mint one. I'm just like, of all the people who probably get it straight away, it's like Michael Good is like, that's not mine. Was the temptation there, and did you act on it? Are your signatures anywhere on this bridge? Because I'm trying to think. Could I have resisted? I don't know.
No, he put our initials in the LCARs, and that's like a common practice. So he has some of the LCARs are like the original initials on the original LCARs, but the warning lights on the back, left and right of the aft, had art department and construction, and so our initials are in there. And so that's I think that's enough. He changed it, and honestly, he put most of the crew's initials like throughout the set. And everyone was kind of going in there looking to see if they could find theirs. So it was really cute to, I don't know if he got me. And I'm like, Mike, calling him to make sure everyone got included.
I think Kit posted on Twitter that picture of that turbolift panel with all of the initials and that on it. I think Kit tweeted that one.
It's something. I mean, not only, again, have you built Star Trek history, you are built into Star Trek history. There's no escape now. Like you're stuck.
That's true. Now, even like I saw myself on Memory Alpha, and I was like, "What? How did I get on there?" But my name's on the Titan plaque, and so because the Titan is prime time story, technically I'm in, the Alpha timeline. I exist. So that's kind of cool.
It's on the Enterprise G plaque as well.
Yeah. It's this, that one. And actually, I think I'm on the Stargazer one too, because we worked on all those ships.
That's a bit cool. I'm still working my way to getting onto one of them. So when I get there, we'll compare notes. It'll be good fun. But once you're on Memory Alpha, I think that's when it's real. And you're on Memory Alpha. So there you go. That's pretty cool.
It's awesome.
In terms of, so obviously, as you've said now yourself, there's several shows you've worked on since Picard. What do we get to see next with your signature all over it?
There's a bunch of stuff. So Quantum Leap, I did 12 episodes. So the first 12 of Quantum Leap, there's a lot of fun stuff in there. There was like a 1960s nuclear facility. We did a spaceship, like a 90s era spaceship. Like we had a lot of really cool sets on there. But after episode 12, I moved on to the show called American Primeval, which will be on Netflix.
Oh, yep.
It's like a Peter Berg noir western. It's not a western. It's like a American Gothic, I guess is what they call it. It's like a dark 1800s. They told us not to say western, but it's really hard to. It's just horses and out in the wilderness. But it's like a Revenant type thrillery period piece. So it's super not anything Star Trek. Like I do miss space a little bit, being out in the dusty wilderness. It's 99% not on stage. So we're out in the world.
I mean, maybe this is such a silly question, but how is it more fun to work on location? Because obviously on location, there's going to be things you can't control, things you can control. Is it more fun to work on a set where it's just like, nope, at least I can control all of the things that are going on here? Or is there a bit more fun to I have no idea what today is going to bring?
It's like summer camp right now. Like we're out in the cowboy camp. So every day is like, you're adventuring out to some location on the top of a mountain. So that's really cool. But yeah, you do have a lot less control. And it's nice because sometimes you don't need to do a lot. Like the camera will just pick up, beautiful sunset, or, you kind of find those moments that you can't find on stage because everything has to be planned out, and you can't look out that way because I don't have a wall there, or it's just different. But there was something really fun about Star Trek because we would come up with these great ideas or these crazy ideas, and then no one would say no, and so we're like, okay, we're making, we just had all this like stuff that we were doing, and eventually people will say no if something gets to be too expensive. But like the nacelle table in the nacelle room, the whole table like actuates up, and the nacelle core is there, and everything interacts. Like the actors can pull all the wires out and gut the whole thing, and it's like a real table, like a real working thing. And nobody stopped us. So we were like, oh, what if we did this, and what if we did that? And I mean that type of creativity and collaboration, like that was the most fun. Like I had so much fun working on Picard. Like it was just a blast. Like every day was And sometimes your problems are like trying to make Star Trek logic work, and like force fields and what are we looking at, and how is this a closet? Is this a whatever it is? But they're just different problems, So it was just a blast.
That's amazing, and it's also that's what you want to hear as well, isn't it? You want it to be, because imagine you go on here and see things like, oh, it was the worst period of my life. Oh, it just everyone. And that Dave Blass, awful human being, just a terrible human. It's awful to work for. It seems to have been a complete love-in of a project, and I'm sure there were days that were more fun than others. But it just seems to have been that everyone came with a pure passion for the project, and that is evident on screen.
Well, we have amnesia too. Like there was like the tough times that we forget. We're like, oh no, it was great. Like it was so fun. Remember that time we did this? And we have selective amnesia for all the, the war stories, and then we do it again. Like how did I get myself into this again? But it's part. We love what we do. And it was definitely a family crew. And even like I came in season 2, and so the cast is like, who are you? You're new. And that happens a lot. Like on Murder, I came in season 5. Like there's people have been working together for years, and you come in and you just right away introduce yourself, and next thing you know, I'm bothering you for something. I'm in the way, or asking questions, or oh hey, look what we did. So that's, they're so welcoming, and even Jonathan Frakes too, because he directs. So I remember my first day being like, hi, I have a question for you, and he's like, who are you? And I'm like, Liz with the art department. And then like all day he was like, Liz, calling me for stuff, and I'm just like, what? How did I get here? So they're definitely a family. They're super, super welcoming. They're lovely, and so that's to go to work every day and work with those people and do that. Like, it's a dream.
I'm not at all jealous. Not even a little, but I get to go to work with Mike every day. So that's lovely too.
See, what more could you ask for, Sean?
Exactly. Liz, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you so much. We're going to come up toward the end of this interview now. I have another question to ask. Mike, could you go ahead? Anything that we have completely steamrolled over there?
No, I think that's pretty much all from me.
Okay, that's great. Then, nice, easy, simple question, Liz. We ask everyone, no thought needed. Liz, what does Star Trek mean to you?
Oh my, this is such a deep question. You kind of let into it already. It's not just a world that you can go and escape to, but it's like a family that you join, and I don't know, it's this universe of like acceptance and like, my words have lost me now.
But that is beautiful. That idea of family, of being welcomed in. It's been, I think, as a fan doing this podcast, getting to speak to people who've worked on the franchise now, hearing that is a wonderful feeling that hits a little bit different, because myself and Mike, sometimes we will ask each other, what does Star Trek mean to us? And it means coming home, it means family, it means wonderful. And when we get to hear people who literally work in the franchise saying something similar, that just kind of, just like a nice little warm feeling in here. So
yeah,
thank you for the warm feeling.
No, and it's funny because it's a franchise and a series that loves the fans. Like every day we're planning stuff and we're like, oh, what will the fans think? Will they, is this going to make sense? Are they going to like this? Or, oh yeah, this, it's all about like, will the fan in me like this? And it's really, they care about the fans. It's not like, oh, whatever, we're just making content. It's very, very fan based. So even like me being that kind of nerdy fan with Star Trek knowledge, they're like, Liz, come in here and explain this to us. How does this work? And so it's so cool. It's hard to explain sometimes.
It's just like, it's just great to hear. I'm just buzzing hearing this as well. Like, it's wonderful. Liz, thank you so much for your time, both on the pod this evening, and thank you for all of the time and effort that you put into all of Star Trek so far. And I'm saying so far because there's no way it's over. As I say, there's no escape. You're not getting away that easily. You will be dragged back, and I know we're gonna love what we see.
I hope so. I'm like, hire me. Call me back.
That's right. Like, kind of, oh, you're on that waiting list. Yeah, I've been ringing. Hire me, like, to do what? I'll hoover the carpet. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. But just before we finish up, when everyone is listening to this and they're going to be like, we want to talk to you, where is the best place to reach out to you and get in touch?
You guys can email me. I think if you Google me, my website has my email on it. And so email is probably the best. You can Twitter too if I see it on there. I'm Instagram too. But yeah, email is probably the best. I've had a few people ask me like technical questions. And if I have time, I'm pretty good now about responding. Twitter, I don't always see it, like if it's like in a thing, but I try to if I do see it. So reach out.
What we'll do is we'll put the links to the website and Twitter and Insta just in the description of this video. Great. So people be able to, lazy people like me, will be able to just click the link. But Liz, thank you so much. This has been so cool. And I've learned so much as well, just about how everything was done. It's like these sets don't just pop up out of the ground.
It's funny because nobody ever asks you like, oh, how did you do this? Like, not like nobody cares, but we do a lot of like movie magic that nobody ever sees. And so this, because you guys already know kind of what to look for, like the technical stuff, like how I printed on the plexiglass. It's like, what? Like nobody's ever asked me that before. And on this, it's like thousands of people are asking it. So, I'm happy to explain, how we did it and what the research.
It's only because people are going to be building these sets in their bedrooms now, so they want to know 100%. So they can get it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. So yeah, Mike, you got that stuff as well. Okay, so we're gonna get the map as well. Okay, perfect. Yep. That is cool. That is still.
I've got my 50-inch TV ready to go. It's fine.
Excellent. Okay. We might be back in touch now about the exact wood paneling on the horseshoe as well.
That was hand painted. So you're out of luck there. We painted those.
Okay, that's great. So are you free for a painting job? Completely unrelated.
Oh yeah.
Excellent, cool. We'll make a weekend of it, a scramble. Put on some Star Trek in the background. That is right. Liz, thank you so much. Mike, thank you so much. You poor man, I know we're pushing forward in the morning for yourself, so thank you so much for joining us.
That's fine.
Wonderful. Everyone who is listening and watching along, thank you as always. You are fantastic. You are brilliant. We will be back, of course, next week with another episode of The War Room. I have been Sean. I'm bloody lucky to be joined by Liz and Mike. Everyone, live long and prosper.